Good morning, rock stars, and welcome to the Tension Without Tension Band Camp. My name is Holly, a Knight of String and Story, and it is my job to guide you to quote with confidence. I am so excited to be here with you. Now, if you have been following along, you know that we were just at QuiltCon. I put the whole store on a truck. I drove it across the country and I got back Wednesday night. And let me tell you, in so many ways, I am still physically recovering from, the challenge of driving and being on my feet, all the things. But let me tell you, emotionally, spiritually, I feel so full from getting to spend so much time with y'all in person last week and now getting to spend time in online with you this morning. And I'm excited to channel a little bit of that QuiltCon sparkle to our time together today. So thank you for making the time to be here with me on a Friday morning. I know for some of y'all, it is really early. Good morning, Gretchen. I am so glad you are here. And y'all, I'm going to be honest, I'm going to dive right in. We have a lot of ground to cover. If you have taken band camps with me or you've attended demos or anything like that at QuiltCon, you know I talk fast, I cover a lot of ground. And as always, I do have a workbook for you today, so don't panic. Now, you may notice there's a little bit of rasp still in my voice post quilt show. I hurt my voice every year. I rarely lose it all the way, but I come home a little raspy. So hello in Phoenix. Did we get to see each other last week, Mary? I'll come home a little raspy. I have a little bit of a dry cough because of that. So if at any point I start to have a coughing fit, just know I will mute myself and be like, give me a second. And I have water and all the good things. But I want to give you a disclaimer that, here we are. We're human. It's a real thing, right? Okay. Enough chitty chat. It is great. Well, enough chitty chat from me anyway. Y'all should chitty chat it up in the comments. Good morning, Sharon. Good morning, Deborah. Good morning, Carol. I am thrilled to have all of you here. Please say hi as you come along. And hello, HAL in Western New York. You're an HAL. I'm an HAK. Let me tell you though, before I got married, I was an HAD. And having the had as initials, that was big fun. I really liked having a word as my initials. I had a lot of fun when I would go and get, coffee and they asked for your name. So much fun. Hello, Priscilla in Virginia, Mary in Utah, Aggie in Virginia. Y'all are thriving this morning. Y'all are thriving. Let's talk about quilting. Are y'all excited about quilting your own quilts? I sure hope so. I'm realizing I could have had better light and some fancy quilting behind me if I was standing at the other table, but you know what? We can do that the next time I do this. I'm still really excited to show off perfect fit too. Okay. I could chit chat all day, but let's talk about tension and we will continue chatting as we go along. This is the Tension Without Tension Band Camp and other tips for you to confidently quilt your own projects. I am going to assume that if you are here, you would like to quilt your own stuff at least some of the time, right? And this is a conversation that I have a lot. When I'm teaching this band camp, when I'm teaching Free Motion Quilting Academy, when I am teaching Ruler Quilting Academy, which we'll talk about at the end of our time together today. But even if you just quilt some of your stuff some of the time, the joy units that can be gained, it's Heather, I love that. The joy units that can be gained and sometimes the money that can be saved, right? And that's something that we're all very conscious of maybe now more than ever. And so being able to extend the life of a project, being able to extend our fun with it can be really, really special, especially if it's a project that we want to add a little extra touch to. All right. So other tips to custom quilt your own projects. I do want to mention that I am presenting from the traditional lands of the Yuki and Cherokee peoples. I'd like to honor that this morning. And you see here on the slide, you see Havana. She is my partner in crime. She is my soul dog. Some of y'all saw the reunion when I got home from QuiltCon. We were very excited to see each other. I may have told John that I missed him almost as much as I missed the dog. I missed him a whole lot too. Don't worry. But you noticed which reunion we filmed. You may hear Havana this morning. She is on high alert for reasons I'm unsure of. All seems well, but she has her eyeballs glued to the door. So if you hear her barking, she has opinions. She has to let the world know that she's here. It's all good, right? Hello, Laura in South Carolina. Quinn, I'm so excited that you are here. And from Georgia, Vicky up in North Carolina. How brilliant. Quinn and I got to spend some fun time together last week. That was a big time. Now, here is the workbook that I promised. Some of y'all are on your phone, so this will be a little tricky to download with the QR code. But if you are on a screen that you can pull out your phone and scan it, you're going to just open the photo app and point it at this lovely QR code and click the link that comes up. She might make a guest appearance, Quinn. We'll see. She's very cute. Maybe I'll show her at the end. um, Go ahead and scan that. A lot of what I'm going to cover today is written down in this workbook. So if you, like me, are still kind of recovering from QuiltCon and you do not consistently have the brain cell and you're worried about remembering this later, or if you're more of a visual learner, right? You're going to want to be able to review this in the written word. Or if you just want to have a resource for later, so you don't have to go digging back through a video to find the thing I said to remember that one tip about basting, right? Then this workbook is going to be really handy to have with you. And a lot of what we are going to cover, well, not a lot, everything we cover today will stay relevant throughout the entirety of your quilting journey. Okay. So we're laying the foundation for you today. And sometimes it's just good to have those reminders and tips and tricks handy. Okay. This workbook, I do believe, gets emailed out with the replay. If for any reason you have trouble finding it, hit reply to one of the emails we've sent you. Laurel will help. Some of y'all got to meet Laurel in person last week. She is an angel. I love her so much. And she makes sure that all the links are linking and that questions are answered. And it's amazing, right? We love her. Okay. Today is a celebration of quilting your own projects. Ooh, take a screenshot with your phone. Can you use it later? I did not know that, Anne. That's fascinating. Today is a celebration of quilting your own projects. In this band camp, I'm going to talk through tension and some of the other hangups that I see when rock stars are wanting to begin their quilting journey, right? By the end of our time together, I hope you feel excited, inspired, and prepared to take the next steps to say, I'm going to learn how to do this. I'm going to quilt at least some of my stuff some of the time. And for some of you, you are going to quilt all of your things all of the time in the wake of this. And that's really exciting. I have said time and time again that this is the year of creativity, that we are quilting for joy units, right? Last year at QuiltCon, I kept saying to folks, I'm like, you know what? My focus right now is on the joy and the community that happens here. This is my number one priority. And being able to work on our projects together in this way to extend the joy units of each project, I think there is power and light and energy in that. And I'm excited to be a part of it with you. So now that I've talked for a very long period of time because I'm excited to be here, let me properly introduce myself to those of you who are new. As I said, my name is Holly Ann Knight. I have been teaching since 2017 and have watched thousands of quilters just like you grow in their confidence to finish their projects through my blog, online content, videos like this, and my online courses. And I am so excited to start you on that journey today. This is the cutie family that I have been referencing. There's a lovely picture of Havana as well. In her outdoor element instead of in her at work element. Hubster is in the top right. He's the cutie with the beard. We've been married, gosh, for a really long time now. How long has it been? We got married in 2013. So this year's 12 years. And we have two bubs who are very quickly not little anymore. The kind of bottom left photo there, you can see Jem. He's the one a little closer to the camera. He turned 10 over Christmas. Ian is in the middle between me and Jem. He turns 9 on Monday. We are in full birthday mode at our house. It has been very fun. And if I am not quilting or hiking with these guys or snuggling with Havana, I am probably out for a run, like 9 out of 10 times. And you will hear me talk about all of those things. We also have 2 cats and a fish tank, not pictured here. So there's a lot going on in my house. It's busy, it's fun, it's energetic. I will tell Ian that you said happy birthday, Quinn. He will love that. This is String and Story on Main. This is where I'm standing right now. So in addition to being an online quilting education company, we also have a brick and mortar and online store. We are here in downtown Duluth, Georgia, which is important. We're in the warm Duluth. And we turned 3 this spring. We have the full line of Paintbrush Studio Solids, a bunch of Aurifil thread, Ruby Star Society, which you can kind of see off to the edges around behind me here, some Fableism, and we love hosting classes and having you come visit us in person. We ship all over the place. So if you don't have a local quilt shop and you are looking for a shop to fill that gap in your life, we would love to be your local online shop. So a bit of housekeeping this morning. I am standing so I can bounce back and forth, but I hope you get a cup of coffee and cozy up or a cup of tea. and enjoy this time. Maybe you've got some chain piecing you can do, maybe some pressing, something that you can, be just kind of gently puttering while I'm teaching. And I want you to ask all of the questions, right? Y'all have done an awesome job of kicking off the chat over here. I love that chat to be just scrolling and going. Chat with each other, ask questions, offer commentary, make jokes, lightly heckle me. All of those things are welcome because I really want this to be a wonderful time together. Karen, there should be. So Karen, if you are on YouTube, I don't know that I can click over there without causing a whole situation. There should be a little gear down in the bottom right on YouTube where you can turn on closed captioning. Um, and I hope that it works live. I am pretty sure that it does. I'm going to attempt to click over there for just a second, guys, because I want to make this as accessible as possible. Um, Give me just a sec. If you hit yes. Oh, it says unavailable. I hate that. Here's my guess, Karen. Um, I am suspicious. Oh, and Quinn, you commented on that as well. I am suspicious that because we are live, there's a lag. So, Karen, there's going to be a replay. Check back and see if that goes live for the replay. If not, please let me know because we have a software that we can use to create that and add it to the replay after the fact. For the workbook, I'm going to do you one better. I'm going to drop a link because then you can just click it. How's that? Bum, bum. This is the quote your first project with confidence workbook. See, y'all are doing a great job. I love this. So hopefully that helps. I'm so sorry it's not available live. I didn't actually realize that. Now I know. But it will be available on the replay. And if for some reason that does not show up, like I said, send me an email. We can create closed captions for you. Awesome. All righty. So get comfy, ask all the questions, be engaged, and hold in your mind the whole time I am talking this very important quote: action cures fear. When we are starting a journey to quilt our own quilts, one of the emotions that quickly can creep up is some level of fear or anxiety. Maybe we're afraid that our sewing machine isn't up to the task. Maybe we're afraid we're not artistic enough. Maybe we are afraid that we are going to ruin our quilts. All of those things, right? Those are all valid anxieties, and we're going to do a lot to debunk them today, right? I am a big believer in three things, and I think we're going to talk about this at the end of our time together too. Three things help dispel this kind of anxiety, okay? Information, positive affirmations, and community. All right. And we're going to work through all those things together so that whatever anxiety may have crept in and that has prevented you from quilting your own quilts up until this point, I'm hoping we can break down some of those barriers together today and that we can instead replace it with excitement. What's really, really cool is that anxiety and excitement actually feel very similar in your body, right? Your heart might race a little bit. You feel that like shortness of breath a little bit. You may yeah, all you may sweat, you may get clammy palms, right? Depending on the level of the emotion. So we want to replace one with the other and get that little heart fluttery feeling in a good way as we prepare to quilt our quilts. Okay. Quinn says, I'm so pumped. Right now, everything is packed up for my move, but I'll be ordering a Moxie XL in a few months. Since your class, I've gotten the motivation to quilt every piece of fabric around me. Quinn, I love that. Quinn and I got to quilt together at QuiltCon in one of my little handy quilter classes, and we had a great time. We had a great time. Gretchen says, I'm very fearful of the seam ripper. Gretchen, honestly, like same. I don't love ripping seams. And I have made every mistake, especially when it comes to quilting quilts. And tension is one of the big ones, right? I have a quilt that hangs in the shop. It's over yonder way. It's one of the most custom quilted quilts I've ever done. And I understood tension. And yet I broke one of my cardinal rules around tension, and I did not check my tension regularly enough as I was stitching. And it took me 15 hours to unpick that quilting. And let me tell you, it was out of that experience that this band camp was born because I became so passionate about making sure that y'all have the tools that to do everything I possibly can to prevent you from ever having that experience. Does that mean you'll never have to rip a seam again? No, we're all going to have to rip seams again, right? But we can greatly reduce the amount of time we spend with Jack and greatly increase the amount of time we spend celebrating with joy units. Okay, let's do it. All right, we're going to go through a few phases together today as we set this up. I'm going to go basically in chronological order through the quilting process. So setting up your space and gathering supplies and all of that kind of stuff. Then we're going to talk about setting up our bodies for success, talk about posture and ergonomics. Y'all are going to get to hear some fun things about injuries I have incurred. Actually, and Quinn heard one of them last week, but I have a new note from my chiropractor to share with y'all. Don't let me forget. Then we're going to talk about the actual getting started with the stitching. Okay. And then we're going to kind of circle back to the mindset piece because we just talked about mindset a little bit, right? By being honest about the fact that wanting to quilt our own projects can be anxiety inducing. But we're going to circle back around to what we can do about that because we're going to need to have that self conversation again and again and again. Okay. So you're going to be equipped in all the ways. We're going to spend a lot of time talking through these things. Like this is going to be 30, 40 minutes of information. It's a lot. It's why there's a replay. It's why there's a workbook. So you don't necessarily feel like you have to remember every exact thing, right? But these are things that feel really big when you're getting started. And after you've done them a few times, they're going to be second nature. Okay. So, one of the things that's going to happen, and we'll talk about this more at the end with the mindset piece, is you may be tempted to feel overwhelmed today. All right. Instead, I want you to remind yourself it doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to start. Okay. And that's also a quote from Angel Trinidad, who I just quoted a moment ago with Action Cures Fear. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to start. And you just begin at the beginning and go step by step. And as you practice all the things that we discuss, and as you continue your quilting journey, hopefully with me, I would love to spend more time together. All of these things are going to become automatic before you know it. All right. Mary says, I've had my Amara for 8 months and haven't been able to master the tension. My practice quilt is still on my frame. Julie says, ditto. And then Quinn says, one thing I don't understand is if you set tension right for a quilt, why would it not work going forward? Ooh, that's a great question. And Quinn, I want you to ask that question again when we get properly into the tension thing. But what I can tell all of y'all is we're going to set you up for success. You got this. I have an Amara as well, Mary. So fear not. It's going to be great. All right. Before quilting, what's the stuff that you need? It's not actually that long of a list. Like, look at that. That's a big font. Like, I didn't even feel the need to number them. Okay. So, you need a sewing machine. You need the sewing machine that you already have. For some of you, that's an Amara. Quinn's already got plans for her for their Moxie XL. Some of you, that's going to be a Singer that you bought at the big box store, maybe the big box store that we're currently in the process of saying farewell to, right? Whatever machine you have, that's the one to start with. Okay. You're going to need a foot. You're going to need a free motion quilting foot or a ruler foot. A ruler foot has tall sides, so the ruler can bump up against there, kind of like a spirograph, so that your ruler can move alongside the edge. If you're doing ruler quilting, you're of course going to want rulers. I have some really cool ones that I would love to share with you. And then the basics, you're going to need needles. I usually use a size 16. And the type of needle is going to depend on what kind of machine that I'm on, right? Like I think the long arms take organ needles. I use a Schmetz Universal when I am on my regular sewing machine. I know folks who use much fancier needles. Schmetz has some really cool specialty needles, but you've got enough to be getting on with right now. We don't need to deep dive into the specifics of specialty rulers. You will have incredible success with a universal needle, and you probably already have it in your sewing room. You need thread. Whatever thread you have will probably do the job. I am in a deeply committed relationship with Orifil 50 weight. It is smooth as butter. The tension adjusts beautifully. It holds the tension beautifully, which I really, really love. And just, oh, the stitch quality. It's so good. Chef's kiss. You're going to want practice sandwiches, which we've already mentioned, right? Fabric batting fabric so that you can mess around and try all the stitches out and get that tension set. Then I love a good pair of quilting gloves. Swan Amity is my favorite brand, and a paper and pen. So you probably already have the what you need or the elements to make what you need in the case of the practice sandwich, with the possible exceptions of the foot, any rulers, and your quilting gloves. All right. So you're off to a great start. You already have most of the things that you need. And the most important thing, really, is what brought you here this morning. You want to do it. And we're going to make it an awesome experience. Now, I mentioned the sewing machine you have, and I mean this so deeply in my soul. I get so many messages being like, yeah, but like I have like the $97 Kenmore from Walmart. Listen, I learned how to free motion quilt on a $97 Kenmore from Walmart. Okay. And listen, these are unpopular names today of all days, but we're just going to be honest about, where we've been, right? Then I bought a $300 Singer. I might have paid $400 for it. Singer on Amazon. And I taught these classes on that machine for years. I taught hundreds and hundreds of folks how to custom quilt their own quilts on a machine I bought at a big box store, right? Now I use a Burnett most of the time. I also have a Bernina and I have my Handy Quilter long arm. I use a lot of different machines, and I have had students learn how to free motion quilt on everything from a featherweight, including a treadle. Y'all, someone graduated from FMQA using a treadle sewing machine. Anything is possible, all the way up to the most expensive long arms on the market. So your machine is the place to start. If you are looking for a permission slip, right? Quinn and I were talking about this last week, right? They were ready for a permission slip for that Moxie. And I'm like, say less. Here is the permission slip, right? If you need someone to say, yes, you're going to love that machine, when the time comes, I am more than happy to write that permission slip for you. But there's enough other things to be getting on with to start this journey than worrying about, do I need to upgrade my machine? We can get to that expense later if you still want to do it after you have practiced for a bit. Okay. Quinn says, when practicing, can you use flannel instead of batting, or will that affect the tension? Great question, Quinn, and you have exactly nailed my answer. My hesitation with using flannel instead of batting is that it will affect the tension. It will stitch differently because it is both thinner but also more dense, which is kind of funky. My recommendation for practicing is, if you have any scraps from other projects, use scrap batting. I talk about practice sandwiches being fat quarter size, but listen, there's no rule. A lot of my practice sandwiches, um, the workbook link is not working. A lot of my practice sandwiches when I was getting started were really weird shapes because they were offcuts from other things, right? It was fabric I had trimmed from around the weird edges. It was little bits of batting I'd gathered here or there. If you have friends who quilt, especially if you have any friends who like long arm a lot, ask if you can have their weird strips that they trim off. Like, a lot of us have lots of extra batting that way. That aside, if you don't have a place to get extra batting, right? Using an 80-20 blend will be a little bit more cost effective. I'm not a huge fan of polyester personally, but if you're looking for cost effective options, that will do it. Or getting, not the best batting at a big box store with a coupon, right? I know our time on that is a little limited at the moment, but do a little bit of shopping around, see if you can find packaged batting that's maybe it's a little thinner than what you would actually use, or maybe it comes apart a little more easily than what you would typically reach for, but it'll do great for practice sandwiches. And I think it'll do better than flannel. Yeah. Try copy pasting that link. It may not hyperlink in the chat. You may have to copy paste it, Sandy. Great questions, y'all. So other things about supplies, the presser foot. You need a hopping foot, a darning foot, or a ruler foot. I think I have a ruler foot handy. Let me see. Y'all know I do this. I get going live and then I'm like, oh, let me walk off and grab a thing. Okay, here's a couple of examples of feet. So a hopping foot might look something like this. It also may be plastic, right? That it may have like a little plastic oval at the bottom, depending on what kind of foot that you get. But it's gonna have some, it's gonna be flat. It's gonna be able to glide. Let me make myself bigger. Hang on. It's gonna be able to glide so that you can go omnidirectionally. A foot like this does not engage with your feed dogs. And that's an important part of being able to move the practice sandwich around. A ruler foot is gonna look something like this. Notice how tall the sides are, right? Like, there's an edge on this one versus there being a side on this one. This is really important if you're going to be using rulers. It's important for safety. Please do not try to quilt with rulers without a proper foot. If you are curious about both free motion quilting and ruler quilting, just go ahead and invest in a ruler foot. You can use it for both. Okay. If you are looking to finish your own quilts on a bit of a budget, getting one of the plastic hopping feet that has a little plastic oval at the bottom, those are like $10. They're very affordable. I was shocked when I learned that as a new quilter, right? I had no money dollars to send my quilts out. This is how I ended up learning how to free motion quilt, as I thought it looked cool, but there was no money. And I remember going into a store and I was like, this is gonna cost me an arm and a leg. I don't know if I can afford this foot. I'd heard stories about how expensive feet can be, right? But I was on a big box machine, and you took a universal presser foot, and that universal hopping foot was $10. Incredible, right? Needles, like I said, size 16 universal, something you already have on hand. And for thread, I love my Aurifil 50 weight. But again, if you are investigating quilting your own quilts primarily for budget reasons, then start with what you have. So much of what we could do can be done with what's already in our sewing rooms. All right. We can always upgrade later. Once you've gathered all your supplies, you're going to need those practice sandwiches. Now, small little practice sandwiches, you can probably just slap them together like a Sunday school felt board, and they're going to stick well enough for what we're doing. But obviously, that won't work when it comes to quilting a proper quilt. So, here's a few quick tips. If you want to avoid getting on the floor, then I recommend using an aerosol spray base. Make sure you've got really good ventilation and use an aerosol spray base and based up on a table or on a design wall where you can be elevated and not have to be crawling around. If your primary goal is to avoid the chemicals, you're like, I don't want a pen, but the aerosol spray base has a lot of chemicals, or it's too pricey because that stuff is wildly expensive sometimes, right? Then homemade spray base, which is referenced in that workbook, is basically a diluted flour paste and it glues the layers of your quilts together. And trust me, it is not moving once you baste it. So you'll get it really smooth, you'll let it dry. You don't have to worry about things like sticky overspray either, because at most you need to mop the floor. Okay. Fusible batting is really, really great if you're wanting a quick and easy solution, especially for smaller projects. Anything, like 36 inches square and smaller, you layer it up, you hit it with a steam iron or, a spritzing water bottle and a nice hot iron, and those layers will fuse together. A great quick on the go option. Here comes the coughing fit. Hey, we knew it would come. I get to talking and my throat gets dry. It's great. Go to QuiltCon, they said. It'll be fun, they said. It was fun. It was worth every scratchy throat moment. All right. Our final thing in this section is talking about making a quilting plan. Now, when you are getting started, you're probably going to start with all over designs, right? You're going to do an all over meander, or you might do all over swirls or an all over paisley. This is an all over square spiral, right? But a lot of y'all have been seeing pictures of my Polaris quilt that I just recently very custom quilted, or maybe the reel I put up last night of the Lanterns of Hope I'm getting ready to work on. And in order to pull off quilting plans like that, you're going to want to make a map. Okay. A quilting plan is a step by step way of deciding what you're going to quilt where. It forms that roadmap. So there's no more worrying while you're in process. This is one of the ways that we avoid a seam ripper, Gretchen, is if we already have an idea of what it's going to look like, we've made a lot of the decisions before we actually start stitching. And that makes all the difference in the world. Okay, because we're not like, well, let me try it, and then having that moment. I can't tell you how many times I've heard the stories of, well, I thought I knew what I wanted to do. I started stitching, but it just didn't look how it looked in my head, and then I had to rip it all out. Right? If we write it down on paper first, we get to audition those motifs on a picture of our quilt and hopefully avoid some of those seam ripper moments. Making a quilting plan also creates a safety net for you. If you, like me and like, most healthy humans, are going to quilt this in several sessions, being able to step away and go do whatever you need to do and not have to hold in your head what you were going to do on your quilt is freedom, right? So being able to step away and come back and know exactly where you left off, exactly where to pick up, it's a really big deal. And it's a really fun way to experiment. I can't tell you how many different quilting plans I have drawn for Lanterns of Hope, which is this quilt pictured here. I've quilted it a bunch of different ways. I have drawn even more quilting plans. Here comes more coffee. This could get interesting. But being able to envision all those possibilities, right? There's an infinite number of ways to quilt every quilt. There's no one right way to quilt a quilt. Right? That's another thing I hear a lot is I'm so scared I won't quilt it right. What is right? Right? There's an infinite number of possibilities and being able to try a bunch of them on paper and then pick your favorite, the one that's right for you in that moment, in that season for that particular quilt, that's freedom too. Okay? A pause for questions. That was a lot of ground in a short period of time. What can I answer about supplies, basting, quilting plans, generally setting up? I was really hoping my voice would be more recovered by now, but at least there's a mute button. All right, type those questions if you have them because we have a lot of ground to cover. I'm going to keep going and I will interrupt myself as your questions pop up. Okay. Now, we talked about gathering the supplies to the space. What about the space itself? How your machine and table are set up, how you're going to hold your body. How are we going to make sure that this is a pain free experience, right? Um, Gretchen says, does the base spray clog the needles? Homemade spray base, no, because you will let it completely dry before you stitch. That part's really important. For the store-bought spray base, the aerosols, not if you use the appropriate amount of spray. The only time that I've ever had issues with it gumming up my needle is when I have used too much, right? So follow the directions on the can, follow the directions on the blog for the homemade spray base, and you will be good to go. Okay. So we've talked about some roadblocks already. We've talked about anxiety. We've talked about fear of messing up our quilts. We've talked about things like being afraid of our seam ripper, of being unsure what we need and if our sewing machine is up to the task. The other roadblock that comes up a lot is I tried it one time and it made my shoulders hurt. So how do we prevent that, right? Kate says, I love this part when you're getting ready for FMQA. It helps me review and reset from bad habits that creep in. I love that, Kate. Listen, every single time I talk about this next part, I am preaching to the choir. This is a daily reminder on my quilting journey of how to hold myself properly. So, ergonomic posture and proper quilting setup are vital to a pain free quilting experience. There are three keys to healthy posture. The first is going to be your table height. Okay. I always tilt the camera down here. I need your table to be at the bottom of your rib cage. If you put your arms at a 90-degree angle where your elbow hits, that's about where your table should be. Okay. The problem is that for a lot of us, the table is way down here or it's way up here. And neither of those is going to be a good setup. Okay. You want to, that having the table at the bottom of your rib cage is going to put you up over your work enough that you are like you have good visibility and that you have good control of your quilt. It puts you in charge, right? There's a joke that I'm not going to make right there. Okay. Puts you in charge of the situation. If you are way down low and you've got, kind of chicken wing syndrome going on here, you're gonna have a lot of strain on your elbows and your shoulders, but you're also not gonna be able to see what you're doing. So it's gonna be hard to follow key number two, which is a stacked body. Head, shoulders, knees, and toes, right? I want your head over your shoulders over your hips. If you're standing at the long arm, then your hips should also be over your knees and ankles with nice soft knees, please do not lock your joints. We are not passing out while we are quilting today. Okay. If you are sitting, then your legs should also be at close to 90 degrees. All right. We want to sit up nice and tall. And this sweater is going to make this difficult to show, right? This is me hunched at a sewing machine. Okay. Notice how my neck is jutting forward. I've got the chicken wing syndrome going. My body is forming a C. C is for cookie. C is for your back is going to hurt later. Okay. I need to be stacked head, shoulders, knees, and toes, right? So now see how my head is up, my shoulders are down and over my hips. And I'm going to quilt here. And if I need to get a little closer to my work, I now have the mobility to hinge at my hip in order to see down instead of having to scrunch my neck out and form that C curve. Okay. So head, shoulders, knees, and toes, engage your core, right? This is not a sucking in feeling. This is like if someone were wrapping you, like, if you were to wrap an ankle in like an ace bandage, it's like if you were wrapping your core. It's like when your kid or your grandkid or your bestie is running at you for that big hug and you're bracing for impact. It's that feeling across your abdomen, not at like full strength, but just at an awareness. So it's going to hold your body stable and strong as you're moving a big, heavy quilt under a machine that has a moving needle. This is very important. Okay. The third thing is lighting. Please make sure you have some sort of task lighting, bulbs that have the lumens of the sun in the light overhead, something. You want it to be nice and bright because for every decade after the age of 30 that we age, you need 10% more light to see the same amount. Okay. So making sure that you have really good lighting is going to be key to reduce squinting, eye fatigue, leaning forward and doing funky things with your neck to try to see better, quilting at a weird, funky angle, trying to see better, all of those things. I love daylight lamps. I have a slim line. I tend to run it right down, kind of right below my eye level so that the light is shining and I kind of look past the light to my work. Sometimes I put it around behind if I need more intense light for matching thread. I also learned at QuiltCon this year that having a black light bulb in a lamp can be really great if you're working with like black on black. It will help it pop so that you can see better. How cool is that? Okay. Sit like a rock star, please, not like a goblin. Listen, at QuiltCon, I was constantly being like, "I'm a goblin," because was that whole audio that went viral, right? Of like, "I am not demure, I am not quiet, I am a goblin," and that is my energy. Let's be honest. But just because I am a goblin doesn't mean I should sit like one, because then, like goblins or like Gollum, who is not a goblin but goblin adjacent, right? I'm gonna have issues and it's gonna hurt real bad. I tell the story all the time of being at, when I was in my early days of long arming and I didn't know anything about posture. And I'm long arming like this, trying to see my work, and I started having issues with my shoulder. And I went into my chiropractor, and it was a new chiropractor who just bought the practice. He's like, "I have a funky question for you." I'm like, "Fire away." He wanted to know if I play rugby on the weekends. Y'all look at me. Look at these pictures. Do you think I play rugby on the weekends? Now, to Quinn's credit, they said yes when I asked this question because Quinn believes in the power of my big spirit. I think Quinn is overzealous in their estimation of my ability to withstand a physical hit. I think I'd get squashed to jelly. I do not have broad shoulders. My friend Courtney, I vanish when I stand behind her. She was a rugby player and has a big old shoulders that were made for hitting other people. Okay. That is not me. But it turns out that if you have bad quilting posture, you too could have rugby shoulder. Let's not. I don't recommend it. The other really interesting thing, Quinn's like, "Nah, you're scrappy, would not fight you." The other really interesting thing, this was the new note from my chiropractor. I was having a lot of issues with my elbows. Anytime, if I long armed a lot in a week and then went to the chiropractor, he could tell. He was like, "Somebody has been doing some custom quilting because your elbows are messed up." And I started weightlifting recently because the other fun fact is after the age of 30, you lose your muscle mass and bone density. I think muscle mass is, are they both 3% a year? You lose a measurable percentage of bone density and muscle mass every year unless you are actively lifting heavy things. What? Unfair. So I started lifting because I was like, well, shoot, I want to be able to sit on the floor when I'm 80 and still be a goblin. And it has made all the difference in my joint health. And it's something that my chiropractor has commented on, that my elbows don't go out the same way that they did anymore. So, food for thought: sit like a rock star, move like a rock star, drink your water, eat your vitamins, eat your vegetables, take your vitamins. I don't know. Take good care of your body is really the bottom line of what I'm talking about here. Moving a quilt around under a machine or moving a machine around over a quilt is a physical activity. And part of being a whole quilting rock star is you deserve to honor the work that your body is doing by having a good setup, having a good light. Carla, I love the daylight lamps. Um, if I don't hit the right button, daylight, slimline. And if you search that on my website, you will find a review of their lights. It's under a blog called "How to Light Your Sewing Space." Yep. Um, You deserve to honor your body and the hard work that it's doing. In addition to these tips and tricks, let me see if I have a proper yes. Um, I want you to keep in mind the muscles that you're using. So holding our body, as we've been discussing, is going to allow big muscles like your delts back here on your shoulder blades, your triceps, and your core to do a lot of the work. Okay. If you have poor posture, you're going to be putting a lot of strain on the tendons and little muscles that are in places like our elbow, our rotator cuff, down in our hands. And if you already have any kind of joint or mobility issues, poor posture and its repercussions are going to quickly cause pain. And I don't want that for your quilting journey. Please make sure that you stretch and hydrate frequently. I rode this horse hard at QuiltCon and made everyone I came into contact with take stretch breaks with me, right? So make sure that every 20 minutes or so, you're getting up, do a little stretch side to side, stretch out those hips, up overhead, down to your toes, and drink some water. Okay. It'll go a long way and helping to stay relaxed and remembering to breathe and drop those shoulders while you're quilting. All right. What questions can I answer about posture, ergonomics, setup, all of that good stuff? This is a horse that I will just, yeah, I'm just going to ride it forever. This is so important to me because we are working really hard. Anne says, make sure your sewing machine is set into the table somehow. We looked up directions on YouTube for making a quilt table out of foam core boards, and it was a game changer until I bought a long arm. If you have that option, 100%. If you don't, I love the Arrow Gidget table. Um, or really any really sturdy table, as long as you can get your chair at the right height for the machine, right? The big thing with your machine sitting on top of a table is it tends to make it too high, right? If we're on a dining room table or a desk, those are at a height designed for good writing or for, eating soup without spilling. But the moment you set a sewing machine on top and you add that extra 4 inches, your hands are way up here. And often the chair is very low, right? So as long as you can get yourself up and over your work, it's not necessarily a bad thing for your sewing machine to be sitting on the table. It is, I think it is easier when it's set in, but getting up and over your work is going to be the absolute linchpin in that scenario. Awesome. All right, keep those questions coming. I'm going to carry on. Let's talk about starting the quilting process. This is where we talk about the ins and outs of tension, okay? We're going to talk about choosing your thread, cleaning your machine, adjusting your tension, and taking those first stitches. When I choose thread for my project, I do exactly what is pictured here. I pick a bunch of threads, I unspool them across my project, and I see how they look. I generally pick a few neutrals, right? Here I had 3 shades of the same color because this was for a specific type of project where the thread came in a collection, etc. But I usually pick a couple of neutrals, a couple of colors that are featured prominently in the quilt, and a couple of wild cards, right? You'd be surprised how often I pick the wild card, the color that I think is too bright, too outlandish, too off the wall. You'd be surprised how often that's the one I unspool and go, well, dang, we're using wasabi green today, right? So unspool it so you can really see how the thread is going to look on the quilt top. Just putting a spool down, it's really hard to tell because a single piece of thread is a lot finer and is going to better imitate a stitching line. All right. Uh, I typically match my top and bobbin thread. There are sometimes exceptions to that. The biggest thing, the biggest way that I want them to match is I want them to be the same type of thread, right? I want them to both be Aurifil 50 weight. I want them to both be Aurifil 40 weight, something like that. It's going to make the tension game easier. We're going to talk about tension as tug of war in a second. It's a lot easier to get that game even when the players kind of start with the same basic stats. Variegated is another really fun wild card, Gretchen. I agree. Um, I often will match color as well, but that is not always true. It kind of depends on what's going on the back, how I want the back to look. For example, some folks, when they were quilting my big old Polaris quilt, it's got a navy back on it, would have chosen, well, you know what? Field trip. Did y'all think I was going to make it through this without a field trip? I certainly hope not. This lady over here, but Orphan is amazing, variegated. Highly recommend. This is my Polaris quilt that I keep talking about. Okay, da 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 da. And I used turquoise thread. It was one of the wild card colors. It won. The back is navy. It would have made a lot of sense to use navy thread, but I wanted the back to look like that, right? And there's a whole different quilt happening on the back of this. So someone asked me at QuiltCon, do I consider the back when I am choosing thread color? And as far as considering the back to limit my options, no, not usually. But do I sometimes consider the back because I want things to stand out? Yes, sometimes I do that. All right. Okay, here we go. For the love of Pete, clean your machine. If you don't remember the last time you cleaned your machine and threaded and changed your needle, it is time. It is time. It is time. It is time. Every couple of bobbins, you need to be getting in there, brushing the lint out. If your machine needs to be oiled, follow the directions in your manual and oil it. Just like I'm encouraging you to drink water and take care of your body, please take care of your most important partner in crime in this, your sewing machine. Okay? A lot of tension issues can be solved by having a clean machine that is with a fresh needle and it's freshly threaded. All right. always start here when you are preparing and if you're having any issues with tension whatsoever. Let's talk about tension, how tension works. For most machines, we are only going to be fooling with the top thread. Some of you who are on long arms, you may be fooling with your bobbin thread as well. The bobbin thread, you use a specific device called a TOA gauge to measure the force that is being the resisting force that is being put on the thread as it comes out of the bobbin case. There's that little metal piece that wraps around, and your thread goes underneath it, and how tightly that is screwed on adjusts how much force of resistance is being put on that thread to slow its exit from the bobbin. Okay, that force is measured in micronewtons. Welcome to physics class. Okay, I have a whole blog on that. I have a whole video on that. If you are in long arm prep, we dive into that much deeper. If that is you and you are curious about that, reach out to me via email and I will send you all those resources. For most of us, we're just going to be fooling with the top thread. Okay. If you are someone that needs to adjust your bobbin thread, you will do that first. You will clean and oil your machine. You will change your needle. You will thread it up so it is beautiful and ready to go. You will set your bobbin tension and then you will leave it alone and proceed with what I'm going to describe next. Okay. So when I say adjust your tension, increase your tension, decrease your tension, I'm talking about the knob on the front of the machine or the buttons on your computerized machine to increase or decrease how much force of resistance is being put on your top thread. Okay. There are a few places in the threading of your machine that tension gets added. For most machines, the big way that it's happening is in those tension discs, right? They look like little symbols. Sometimes they're right on the front of the machine. Sometimes they're tucked behind the cover. And we want our game of tension tug of war to be evenly matched. Okay, so when that top thread comes off the spool, it goes through all the threading mechanisms and through the needle. And then we have our bobbin full of thread. That needle goes down to take a stitch. When that needle goes down, it pulls thread from the spool and actually forms a little loop down in the bobbin case. And the bobbin case then goes click, click, and clicks twice. And it loops around where your bobbin is so that those threads twist together. We've all kind of seen the videos that have circulated of showing this really slow and really large, right? Those threads twist together. If the tension is evenly matched, our game of tug of war has the same number of players and they are all of roughly the same strength on each side, that twist will land in your batting and your stitches will look the same on the top and on the bottom. Chef's kiss. This is the goal. Okay. What do we do when that doesn't work? Okay. We need to adjust the tension. Some of us were told, it was drilled into us even when we started learning how to sew, that we should never touch the tension. Okay. It's a new day and age, you're going to touch the tension. Okay. Most of us were taught that when we learned to sew and we were kiddos, right? And we didn't need to be messing around with settings on the machine. We are now grown folks with our grown machines. And I'm going to teach you how to do this well. And it's going to make all the difference in having those beautiful stitches as you start to quilt. Okay. Debbie says, can the bobbin thread be a different kind of thread than the top thread? Technically, it can. It will make the tension harder to adjust. So if you're just getting started and especially if you've had tension issues in the past, I would start by matching them. And then you can branch out and get a little more adventurous with this game later. Okay. As we start to adjust it, every single time you adjust your tension, I need you to raise your presser foot. So stop sewing, needle down, raise your presser foot. That opens up those tension discs. And then you can make your adjustments and then you can close it back. Now, I recently learned at QuiltCon that there are some machines that have a feature that you can basically open the tension discs without raising the foot. It's a special feature in the computerized machine. If your machine has that feature and you have the knowledge of that to be able to do that, rock on. But we need those tension discs open in order to make these adjustments because of how the screw mechanism works. All right. So here are the tips. Like I said, I want you to lift your presser foot every single time. Otherwise, you're going to be messing with it. And you're like, why isn't it changing? Because it hasn't reset itself. Okay. Lift up the presser foot. If you go to start practicing and you have eyelashes on the back, it looks jiggity jaggedy in some type of way. I have an example. Hold, please. Mine's a funky example because it's on binding, not on quilting. This is the quilt that I bound right before QuiltCon, and I don't know what went wrong, but fixing this was not a before QuiltCon problem. Okay, if you have stitching that looks like this, see all these like weird jiggity jaggities? and how like not cute that is, and it's kind of floating along the back and it's some type of way. My tension needs to be tightened. For whatever reason, my top thread was pulling down to the back and it was looping around funny and it is not cute. Okay. So I'm going to raise up my presser foot righty tighty. Okay. Turn it to the right, increase the number and tighten my tension and test again. If you are instead, you are getting thread breaks, you are getting skipped stitches, you are getting any kind of eyelashes on the top of your quilt, then your top tension is too tight. It is pulling that bobbin thread up from the bottom. It is winning the game of tug of war. Okay. And we need to loosen our tension, lefty loosey, or lower that number. All right. Any questions about the mechanics of tension? Listen, I was talking to a musician about this recently and she co signed this analogy. So I'm going to share it with you. Adjusting your tension is kind of like tuning an instrument. There is information and science and knowledge behind it, and it takes a little bit of finesse, right? You will learn your machine as you are starting your quilting journey. Start by putting into practice the information and the knowledge that I have shared. Hopefully, it will get better. Remember, it doesn't have to get perfect, it just has to start. Okay. And you will continue to finesse as you practice, as you get to know your machine, as you build habits around the threads and needles that you're using, and even the motifs that you're using. We encountered this a little bit in one of my classes at QuiltCon. That we were working on the handy quilter long arms, and we had our tension that looked beautiful when we did a meander. And then when we switched to the swirls, one of my rock stars said it's pulling a little bit at the point. And that's because the tension that looked great on a gentle motif like a meander was just a little bit too tight on a swirl. And we loosened up her tension a little bit, and that problem went away, right? So it is part science, part art. You may not get it perfect right away. You may have to retry from time to time, right? Quinn asked a question earlier. If you set your tension for a project, how come you sometimes have to adjust it again, right? Let me actually read their words so I can get this right. If you set the tension right for a quilt, why would it not work going forward? Does tension loosen or tighten as you work, or does each quilt need different tension? This is a great, wonderful, fabulous question. I have a few experiences with this, okay? Most machines that have a manual tension knob, right? Righty tighty, lefty loosey, they hold tension really, really well. Okay. And if you are consistent about the type of thread that you use, and you're not necessarily having some quilts that have no seams and other quilts that have tons of seams, you're probably not going to be doing a lot of changing around of that, right? If your variables are staying steady, then your tension probably will as well. This is one of the reasons I'm so committed to Aurifil 50 weight, because I have all of my machines adjusted for beautiful stitches when I'm working with Aurifil 50 weight. And if I change my thread weight, I'm going to have to adjust my tension again. And it's just a little bit of a hassle, right? It can be done. Sometimes there's really good reasons to do it. So sometimes I do. But, I can fiddle around a whole lot less if I do not change too many variables. That being said, there are other factors that can affect your tension. If you are on a machine, if you are on a computerized machine, most of those reset your tension settings when you turn the machine off and turn it on again. Okay. And you'll have to reset back to the set, hopefully just back to the settings you were using before. I've seen folks, they will write down whatever they adjusted and slap it on the front of the machine if they have to change projects or if they have to turn their machine off because they got to go do something, right? So they know what to set it to when they come back. However, my observation, and I'm sure someone is going to come at me and is going to say that this is not true and I am a conspiracy theorist. I'm speaking from my personal experience and observation. I feel like computerized machines can sometimes be a little bit more finicky, that the same settings don't always feel like they stitch out the same. The widest variation of this is going to be in your more affordable machines, okay? You get into the really high-end machines, they're dialed in within an inch of their life, but especially on more affordable computerized machines, I notice a sensitivity to this of like they can be a little bit funky. I had a singer back in the day that I used to swear that the tension was affected by the barometric pressure. And I felt like if we were having really dry days or we were heading into really rainy days, my tension did funkier things. Okay. I have no idea if there's any scientific evidence for that. That's just been my experience. So, depending on the machine that you have, you may have to do a little bit more fiddling around. You're going to learn your machine. You're going to get this dialed in. It's going to be awesome. Okay. Any other questions about that? That was a really good question, Quinn. Thank you for asking it. And thank you for being patient while I waited to come back to it. Now, you're going to head in from actually, oh, the other variable. There was one more. The other really important variable to keep in mind is if you have to stop and wind a bobbin, right? And you unthread your needle or you've pulled the bobbin out, right? Then that's going if when you rethread it, if anything is not exactly the same or is not exactly right, that can affect tension as well. This is something I bring up a lot is if your tension was great and then you wound a bobbin and then it all went to heck, then consider just rethreading and that may fix it, right? Gretchen says, I wonder if auto scissors cuts affects tension. I've not had that experience, but I would believe that could be a possibility if it snagged something funky. Yeah. Um, if you feel like your machine does funky things after you use the auto scissors, then I just wouldn't use them when you're quilting. I think that's a great thing to think about. Yeah. Are these conspiracy theories? I don't know. But I think being honest about these experiences can be helpful in case you're having kind of funky things too. I always remind people these machines are computers, right? There's a part of them that is mechanical, but they're also computers. And that means that funky stuff happens sometimes, right? Technology can be weird. And sometimes it just needs a minute. Okay. There have been times where I've just been like, I'm going to just turn you off and I will be back tomorrow. And hopefully my machine will be in a better mood by then. Right. Quinn says, is this being recorded? Yes, it is. And the replay will be available on YouTube as soon as I'm done. So fear not. And it'll be emailed out, all those good things. Warming up is when you are going to test your tension, is when you're going to practice your machines, and it's when you're kind of going to find your sea legs, if you will. Um, how much time you spend warming up before you stitch on your actual quilt is largely up to you. Especially if you're doing a motif you don't do very often, I recommend at least taking 5, 10, 15 minutes on a practice sandwich, right? If you're on your long arm, you may just run a piece of fabric down the side in that extra backing and just go through a couple of the motifs that you're going to be using on your quilt. And then you can flip that edge over, check your tension, and make any adjustments you need to make before you get on your actual quilt, right? And when I had machines that I knew that the tension could be a little bit unpredictable, anytime I needed to step away for long enough that I had to turn the machine off, I would go ahead and break my thread, right? And bury those thread tails so that I could warm up with a practice sandwich when I came back and just make sure my tension was behaving. This is another way, Gretchen, that we avoid our seam ripper, right? Is testing our tension on practice sandwiches before we're on our precious quilts saves a multitude of distress. Okay. And Quinn, to circle back to you on the whole idea of like, okay, but that quote that I referenced at the beginning, I had set the tension, what went wrong? I don't know what went wrong. Probably I changed the bobbin and it didn't sit in there quite right. And I didn't notice until the end of the bobbin. Like that's probably what happened. Um, but I should have checked it. I should. And now what I'll do when I change the bobbin is I'll stitch, a little 2 or 3 inch square, and then I'll poke my head under there, or I'll flip the quilt over and just make sure. Because unquilting this much is annoying, but whatever. Unquilting this much. Listen, I watched an entire season of Inspector Morse unpicking that quilt. Do you know how long episodes of Inspector Morse are? My back still hurts. Um, Avis says, well, the computerized machine is a higher number tension, tighter tension. Yes, higher number is tighter, righty tighty. Lower number is looser, lefty loosey. Great question. Yeah. All right. Any more questions about tension specifically? We had to talk about all of the supporting characters too. I'm going to speak to our mindset a little bit, which y'all have done an awesome job with already, just by simply asking the questions that have come to mind. And then we're going to talk about how we can keep quilting together. Okay. Fire away in the chat if you have questions that I haven't answered yet. About this point, if not before then, like let's say you have managed to set your anxiety aside and you've gathered your supplies and you've set up your space and your ergonomics are ready and you've adjusted your tension and you've done a little bit of a practice sandwich. About this point is when that voice in your head, for some of you, it's an art teacher. For some of you, it is a parent. For some of you, it's your own voice, whatever. that critical voice, we call that your inner mean grump, your IMG. That voice rises up and says, "You can't do this. What do you think you're doing?" And it might say some variation of, "You're not enough of an artist. You're too old. You're too inexperienced. You're not creative enough. This machine isn't fancy enough." Um, Whatever, right? It says all kinds of things. And we are going to kindly let the door hit that voice where the good Lord split it. Okay. And we're going to talk about how. So, the upside of your IMG is that your IMG keeps you alive. Okay. This voice, even though sometimes this voice gets personified if we've had critical people in our life, but this voice is actually rooted in your brain stem. This is the part of your brain that says, the stove is hot, don't touch it. You'll get hurt. That's a tiger. You should hide, run, get to safety, right? This voice keeps us alive. The downside is that this voice can't tell the difference between trying something new and a tiger that's going to eat us. It assumes all unfamiliar things should be coded as life threatening. And learning how to quilt your own quilts is not a life threatening event. No matter how uncomfortable maybe it feels at first, you are safe, you are well, you are a rock star, okay? But our body doesn't always know that, especially because as grown folks, we sometimes forget what it was like to be a beginner, right? When we're kids and we're learning how to walk and talk and read and write and wipe our bums and all the other life skills we're acquiring, right? We're used to being a beginner and we tend to be a little bit more gritty and we're a little bit more willing to, we take that first step, we fall on our little diapered bums and we get right back up and we try again. And we don't feel any kind of shame. We don't tell ourselves any kind of stories about that. It doesn't have any meaning on our worth. It just means we need more practice, right? Practice makes progress, right? But as grown folks, we're so used to knowing how to do so many things kind of on autopilot that when we do something that's really new, sometimes it freaks our brain right out. Okay. And we need to have a little moment with our brain. So here's how we calm the IMG. This is what I was talking about at the very beginning with information. This is what we've spent a lot of time today doing. I've given you a lot of facts and tips and tricks so that hopefully you feel like you have a bit of a comprehensive picture of what it takes to start learning how to free motion quilt or ruler quilt your own projects. All right. You can come back to this information again and again. And when your IMG goes, "Who do you think you are?" because your tension looks some type of way, you can say, "Please sit down. I know how to diagnose this and I am going to fix it." Okay. Sometimes we just need a personal pep talk, right? And when we lack the ability to do this ourselves, sometimes we need it from our community, right? Sometimes we got to just look ourselves in the eyeball and say, "Holly Ann, that quilt did not go as planned. But you know what? It's okay because done is better than perfect. It's now snuggleable, right? Practice makes progress. Here's the things I tried and they didn't work how I thought they would. So here's what I'm going to try next time, right? And one that I think is really important, it's just effing fabric. Okay. There are so many big, scary, important, life threatening things in the world. Our quilting should not be one of them. We quilt for joy units, right? We do this to create beauty. We do this for creative expression. We do this for fun, right? We do this because we relish a certain type of challenge, right? Don't put so much pressure on your quilting to be perfect that you miss the good. Okay. I don't remember who it was that said it, but perfectionism is the enemy of good and even of great. All right. The last way to calm your IMG, like I said, sometimes we cease to have the ability to do our own problem solving or our own pep talking, and we need our people. And that is why we do events like this and why inside of Free Motion Quilting Academy and Ruler Quilting Academy, I do live Q&As. We have community groups because sometimes you need to be able to post a picture and say, "Please help, it's not working. And I no longer have the brain cell." Right? We talk at amongst the team that Team Rockstar is sometimes like a clouder of orange cats, right? You know, the whole thing about orange cats that they all collectively uh, share one brain cell. Sometimes our team is like that, right? And when we hit that wall, and whether it's our IMG has reared up or we are tired or whatever, we will look at each other and go, "I don't have the brain cell. Please help," right? sometimes when we're working on learning something new, we need a community where we can go, I don't got it right now. I do not have the chutzpah. I do not have the pizzazz. I do not have the brain cell. Can someone offer me some words of encouragement? Can someone offer me some problem solving ideas so that I can keep going with this? And being able to do that, that's real magic, right? Having people you can do that with, that's real magic. So, no matter what your IMG says, and our IMGs can be really mean, right? Some of y'all came up to me at QuiltCon and you said, "How are you so energetic and encouraging all the time?" First of all, I'm not, but I really appreciate that y'all think that. I try my best because I think that's important. But the reason it's such a value and a priority to me is because I have a really, really, really mean inner mean grump, right? I talk about how String and Story was born out of my journey with postpartum depression. That was not my first or my last journey with depression and anxiety and all the things, right? I don't ever want your brain to make you feel the way that my brain has made me feel. And I've had to do a lot of work to learn how to talk to my brain and speak truth when my brain is a liar. All right. And so I love having the opportunity sometimes to kind of fight your brain for you, right? Because you can and will be a quilting rock star. You already are by showing up today and raising your hand and saying, I want to grow. Can you teach me some stuff so I can grow? It is scary to admit there are things we want to learn, right? It is much easier to act like we know all of the things. But there's a beautiful quote from Marianne Fonz in a video coming out of QuiltCon that she said, when you first learn to quilt, for your first 1 to 3 quilts, you are a beginner. And for the rest of your quilting journey, you are intermediate because we are always learning and always growing. And I think being able to say, there's a thing I want to learn, that's magic too. And I love being able to be a part of that journey with you, whether it is offering tips and tricks, teaching you, practical motifs inside one of my courses, or maybe even kind of taking on your IMG. All right. So, what's your quilting dream? Right? I've referenced a few times this nebulous kind of dream that might have brought you to this band camp today. I'm going to guess that there's something specific you want to do. Maybe you have a rack of quilt tops that you have enjoyed piecing, but it's time to get them quilted and you want to do it yourself. Maybe you have a machine that you've taken the time and the money to invest in having that Amara, and you want to feel like a rock star when you're using it. Maybe you have a special quilt top like my Polaris quilt that I just finished, that you know exactly how you want it quilted and you want to be able to bring that vision to life. All right. Do me a favor, drop in the chat kind of what your dream looks like. Because I would love to know. Avis, I would love to have you in class. I'm going to talk about that in like 5 seconds, very literally. Because whatever dream brought you here, I would love to help you go to that next step as a quilting rock star. And I would love to do that inside of one of my online classes. What's really special about this platform right now that we are engaging in is that this is a wonderful opportunity to show how we can teach through the screen, right? That you can pipe me into your sewing room and I can meet you right where you are. And I would love to keep getting to do that inside of Free Motion Quilting Academy and Ruler Quilting Academy. These are my 2 signature online courses that are going to guide you from being maybe nervous beginner quilters that you're going, I want to quilt my own quilts, but I'm a little unsure, to being a confident intermediate quilting rock star where you can say, I can quilt my own stuff. I can at least quilt some of my stuff some of the time, right? There's always folks that are like the really big things, they're going to the long armor, and that's okay. You get to make that decision about what's right for you, what brings you joy units to further your quilting journey. Okay? Gretchen says, my quilting dream is to quilt each section of my quilt with puffy quilt designs. Yes, I love a good puffy moment. Carla says, I want to learn about ruler quilting. Awesome. It's in like 2 slides. You ready? But first I got to tell you about Maureen. And this is a small font, and I'm due to go to the eye doctor, so I'm going to lean in really close to read this. Maureen says, I loved everything about Free Motion Quilting Academy. At 69, I was a little doubtful that I could learn how to free motion quilt. Maureen, she knows this now because she was in class with me. I think the oldest student to ever go through Free Motion Quilting Academy was like 97, right? You are just getting started. Whatever age you're at, you are just getting started. I decided to try, and Holly Ann's teaching style and videos are fantastic. Although the course is 12 weeks long, there's no pressure to finish within that time period. Life sometimes gets in the way, and it's so very nice to have one less pressure. I love being able to go back to the course over and over again for a refresher of any of the motifs. Another wonderful part of this course was being able to post questions and be in contact with others taking it. There's so much encouragement within the group, that community we talked about, right? Holly Ann, thank you for this fantastic course. I hope one day I can pop into your shop and meet you in person. This will go down as one of my very best Christmas gifts that my 6 children have given to me. I will also add as an addendum that I think a year or two later, her children also gifted her ruler quilting academy, which I just think is so fabulous. In the chat, Mary says, my dream is to quilt all my quilts and make them modern and unique. Yes, so let's do it. See, look at her perfect puffy stepping stones. Exactly. You're going to be able to do that too. I'm going to teach you how. Cheryl says, I want to learn more. I'm currently working on my first quilt and purchased so much fabric that I'm afraid to make a move. I'm so afraid of doing something wrong or making an error. Cheryl, there's a lot fewer rules than some people make it out to be. And I'm going to teach you all the things you need to know. Don't you worry. This is Gail, and I was lucky enough to get to take this picture because Gail is local to me. And Gail says, I love learning how to use the rulers to make different shapes for the backgrounds, fillers, and borders. I love Holly Ann's realness in her teaching and her positive, encouraging attitude. So let's talk about the 2 academies. First up is Free Motion Quilting Academy. This is a super valuable course, as you can see. It includes 6 professionally recorded video units teaching you all of the ins and outs of what you need to know from setup. So deep diving into what we talked about today and showing you step by step, not just talking about it, and then teaching you over 30 free motion quilting motifs, plus a bonus unit about quilting plans. So that whole idea of the roadmap that we talked about of deciding what to quilt where, we have a whole unit on that so that you can make quilting plans for your projects too. And just like Mary said, make them unique to your taste and your style, and it will be fabulous. There's a big old workbook so that if you are a workbook girly, I'm a workbook girly. Okay. If you're a workbook person, this is the workbook for you. Then we have an amazing community group where I go live each week answering questions, and you're able to post your pictures for encouragement, for problem solving, all of those things. And once you're in the course, you're in it. Okay. So like Maureen said, it's a 12-week course if you follow the schedule. But if lifes, then you just pick up when you are able and you carry on. And every single cohort, we have folks who are jumping back in that they signed up previously, life happened, and then they're diving back in with us to continue that journey. Okay. This is a one-time tuition investment of $327. I am going to post the link in the chat, but don't click over there yet because I need to tell you once I actually find the freaking link, it's over here somewhere. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have too many links over. I need to tell you about Ruler Quilting Academy because it's important to know about the tuition rates related to both of them. So registration is open until March 8th. New student orientation starts on March 11th, and both of those fun facts are also true for Ruler Quilting Academy. So Ruler Quilting Academy includes lifetime access to 6 video units, including everything you need to know about setup and getting ready to rock and roll with rulers. We will be talking, especially in the Q&As, about my new ruler, the Quilting Rockstar ruler that came out. That was not the ruler that I used when I filmed this because it didn't exist yet. But that's the ruler that will be included in the kit should you choose to purchase it. And we're going to add some extra stuff in the Q&As so that you've got ideas of what to do with that. We have those same live video Q&As, a full color workbook, and that same community. And this course, I hope this year, I don't have a firm timeline yet, but this course will have an update at some point. I filmed this course. At some point, we will professionally film it. And when that happens, you will receive that update for free. Okay. Same thing, it's over 24 ruler quilting motifs, so you can add some really cool stuff to your quilts. All right. Y'all, I'm so excited to say this phrase. But wait, there's more. All right. So Free Motion Quilting Academy, full tuition, $327. Ruler Quilting Academy, $247. But the reality is if you are curious about custom quilting, if you want to be able to do all the things on your quilt, then you're going to want both skill sets. And it actually works really well to practice them side by side. Okay. So if you enroll in both academies, you can actually save $100 on your tuition. It's a joint Q&A, so you just have to show up to one live. It's not like it's adding an extra time commitment on that front. And being able to work these courses in tandem, because some folks find that free motion quilting comes a little easier, and some folks find that ruler quilting comes a little easier, gives you the ability to go back and forth and work at your own pace for what is clicking in your brain at the time. Okay. So same link. When you click through to enroll, you'll just add both to your cart and that discount will be added at checkout. Okay. A little asterisk, there are optional kits for both of these courses, and you can purchase those at the exact same time that you enroll in the course if you would like to. If you're like, let me just get enrolled in the course, and then during student orientation, I will find out all about the things, then that works as well. Carla has asked a very important question. What time of day is the live Q&A? I think this is on, yes, it is on this slide because it's part of the community group inside Kajabi Communities. Um, think of this like study hall for your class, okay? So this is an opportunity where you can chat with each other, you can share pictures, and this is also where I pull the questions from for the live Q&As. The Q&As are at 11 a.m. Eastern on Wednesday, a time that does not work for everyone. Trust me, because we have folks in basically every time zone. There's not a time that works for everyone. So, what we do is we collect questions starting on Tuesday. The wonderful Laurel, who I referenced earlier, puts a post up and says, what questions do you have? Right. And then when I go live, I answer all of those questions as well as the ones that are asked in the chat during the live. So that if you can't attend, you have life commitments, right? You miss it for some reason. Whatever, it's the middle of the night where you live, right? We have folks in Australia. It happens. Then you can catch that replay. All right. And Laurel gets those replays up into our Q&A vault within a day or two. So it's easy to go in and get the answers that you need. Great question, Carla. What does lifetime access mean? It means you're stuck with me, like in the best way, I hope, right? Because it means that you can continue to go back to these videos forever, right? It's not like after a year you lose access and you can't watch them anymore. You can keep watching year after year, cohort after cohort without paying extra. It means if we make any updates or we add anything, you get that added to your content library without paying extra. Okay. I think that's a really big deal because life does life. The average graduate from either of these courses takes two cohorts to go through. There's always folks who go through in exactly one, it works for them. And there's always folks that need a little bit more time, and your pace is the perfect pace, and I'm here for it. It's really awesome. So this is Sandra. Sandra said, I loved Hack's enthusiasm, support, and teaching style. The supportive environment that is cultivated and the permission to not be perfect. By the way, these projects that they're holding up are their graduation projects from the respective courses. Megan says, I loved the permission to play. Great videos that show us how to do each motif, but no firm requirement on how they had to be used in the final project. I really thought it was going to be difficult, but once I got going, it wasn't that hard. Practice is fun. You give us the confidence to get past our fears and get started. And I really enjoyed this class, possibly even more than FMQA, which I just think is funny every time I read it. But I think that's wonderful evidence. Like free motion quilting is my ride or die, right? But it's not everyone's. And what our preferences are and what we enjoy most, what brings us the most joy units, that can vary from person to person. And that's so cool. I love it. So, Free Motion Quilting Academy and Ruler Quilting Academy allow you to learn how to custom quilt your projects from the privacy and comfort of your own home. You do not have to lug your machine anywhere. You don't have to worry about someone being over your shoulder. If something is frustrating and you need to stand up and say some swear words and storm out of the room, you can totally do that. And I will be back, or I will be there when you come back. Because sometimes learning can be a little bit messy. But just like today, my goal is to make that learning as accessible and enjoyable and stress free as possible. Free Motion Quilting Academy and Ruler Quilting Academy encourage you to start with what you have, that machine you already have, the thread you already have, the needles you already have. Use some fabric that's buried in the back of your stash for those practice sandwiches, rather than telling you that you out of the gate got to go buy something bigger, fancier, more, right? I'm going to keep the supply list as minimal and as essential as I can because I want you to feel confident making the investment in the education itself and not feeling like there has to be a lot of extra stuff. Free Motion Quilting Academy and Ruler Quilting Academy are ready when you are, regardless of geography or time zone, with on-demand pre-recorded video lessons. So the lessons themselves are already recorded and they drip out on Mondays, okay? And once a lesson is released, you have that lifetime access to it. The Q&As are the live piece, okay? But we record those and there's a replay. Free Motion Quilting Academy and Ruler Quilting Academy offer you ongoing access to the instructor so you never feel stuck or alone and so you can get near real-time help during those Q&As, right? I love it when I get to teach in person and see y'all in real life. I also know it can be challenging, and I try to provide answers to this in my classes. But big picture, it can be hard if you take a class in person with someone or maybe you watch a video on YouTube, but you get stuck and you need help. Knowing how to ask for help and where to ask for help and being confident that you're going to receive help is really, really important. And we've set you up for success with that inside of the academies. Free Motion Quilting Academy and Ruler Quilting Academy connect you with other rock stars in training, like the lovely folks that you've gotten to hang out with today in this chat, all around the world, so that you can encourage each other. You can help each other. When each other's IMGs get loud, you can talk them down, right? When someone else is having an issue that you've solved in the past, you can share your knowledge. And that makes our quilting community stronger and more global and more diverse, which is very, very cool. So this is Francie Joe. I finally got to hug Francie Joe for real back in November for the first time. We have known each other online for years. And when I tell you the joy it brought me to finally get to hug this beautiful woman, she says, I went from beginner to intermediate during Free Motion Quilting Academy. Before I started, I could not make curved lines at all. And now I love making curvy motifs. The support and encouragement from Holly Ann and the other rock stars is so helpful. This course is worth every penny. Elizabeth said, I love your videos. You explain things clearly. You are inspiring. And I love that you sometimes have a bobble, but you keep going. That means I can too. Your Q&A sessions are fun and your enthusiasm is contagious. So as a quick review, Free Motion Quilting Academy is all about those more organic motifs that don't use a ruler in order to make them. Think meander, think swirls, think paisleys, feathers, McTavishing, all of that good stuff. This is a professionally filmed course with a big old workbook and a bonus unit all about deciding what to quilt where. This is a 12-week course if you go through with the schedule, and tuition for this course is $327. Ruler Quilting Academy is for the motifs that are more geometric, that you are going to use a ruler in order to shape them while you quilt. It includes 6 video lessons teaching you dozens of motifs. We have those same live Q&As, an awesome workbook, a fabulous community, and full tuition for this class is $247. Both of these classes offer lifetime access. However, if you purchase both at the same time, you can save $100 on your tuition. So if you're doing the mathy math, that brings your total down to $474. If you are familiar with long arming costs, this is like having 2 moderately large quilts, long armed edge to edge. Okay, so 2 quilts, boom. All right. It's an awesome savings. It's an awesome experience. And I would love to guide you step by step to be able to finish your quilts with skill and with confidence. Karen says, I purchased FMQA several years ago. Is there a discount if I purchase Ruler Quilting Academy now? Yes, check your email. There is a coupon code for existing students looking to add to their collection. If you have any trouble, finding that, just send us an email. So hit reply to whatever email gave you the link to this, and we can help you out, Karen. Great question. Priscilla says, is the workbook a download or do you send it to us already printed? It is a download, and you are welcome to get it printed if you like. Yes. Susan, do you have any follow-up questions on tension? I would love to answer them if you have them. Are there any questions about the courses that I can answer for y'all or anything else we covered today? Thank you for your time. We have been here together for like 82 minutes. I think about that with this one because in theory, I'm like, we'll be there for an hour. And I'm like, nah, I'm going to teach for close to an hour. We've got so much good stuff to cover. And then we have to talk about how we can keep going. It's the best time. It's the best time. Karen says, Holly Ann, OMG, this session was fantastic. I learned a ton of valuable info and was reminded of things I may not be doing, but should be. Karen, thank you so much. I'm going to throw that up on the screen because it makes me really happy. Thank you for taking the time to be here. I love that it made a difference for you. Here's the thing. I would be geeked out of my mind to get to spend the next couple of months with every single one of you inside of Free Motion Quilting Academy and/or Ruler Quilting Academy. I hope that you sign up. It would be an honor to be your teacher and hold your hand through these steps and celebrate you as you grow in your quilting skills. And also, if that's not the right journey for you right now, I hope, like Karen, you found this time valuable. I hope you learned something that was, as I like to say, worth the price of admission, something that you can take with you that you're like, man, that was a great nugget. That's what I needed out of that session today. Again, thank you so much for your time. It is a delight to be with you. This will be available for replay on YouTube right away. I know we were talking about closed captions at the beginning. I'm hoping those will pop up as soon as this has had a chance to process through the YouTube platform. If you would like closed captions and for any reason it doesn't, please reach out to us via email and we can use software to make them and add them to the video. I want this video to be accessible to you. It's also worth noting that we have closed captions and transcripts on all of the course videos. Okay? Rockstars, thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your Friday. I hope to see you inside Free Motion Quilting Academy and Ruler Quilting Academy, and get to spend the next weeks and months with you. Bye for now.